Um, so next, we'd like to invite Mutale Nkande to the Zoom stage. Welcome, Mutale.
Hopefully, I'm not muted. Hi, Salome. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for folks at iBeam to come out and see me. My name is Mitali Nkonde. I use she, her pronouns. I am a Black woman with brown skin and black curly hair, and I am wearing a mint green sweater. And what I'm hoping to speak to you a little bit about today, because you've heard something about me, is how we can use story and video to inoculate platforms from disinformation. Because, in my view, not having access to the truth is a harm. And we want to make sure that Black and Brown communities can truly be who they are, not just in the technical present, but in the technical future also. So I'm going to take you through some slides and hopefully have some conversation. Wait, sorry, I didn't. Okay, here we go. I didn't share my screen. So, AI for the People is my latest venture. We are a communications firm, and we use art and culture to educate around around technology and its racial justice impacts. And to start, I just want to give you an idea of who we are and what we do. So, our goal is to advance racial justice in technology. We work in two areas. One is called Race, Technology, and the Black Body. And under that work, and another is called Race, Technology, and Information Integrity. And that's really where I'm going to concentrate my remarks today. Under the Black Body work, we use principally film. That is the discipline that I come from. And we use those films to drive policy engagement. And if we have time, I can certainly speak about the work we're doing in biometrics and facial recognition specifically, and some acts that we are working on around the country. But for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to speak about our information technology work, which includes computational social media analysis. And we use that analysis to build trust with communities through storytelling. So, our niche in the information integrity work is data journalism. And the reason that we think data journalism is so important is that 55% of American adults are getting their news from social media. And this was a study done by Pew Research in 2019 that found this. At the same time, computational analysis, and specifically what we do, which is scraping the Twitter API, looking at rhetorical patterns, and trying to find out what is being said about and against Black and other people of color online, isn't widely available. And so we're really looking to close that gap. And in 2020, the case study that I'm discussing, we found the major disinformation campaigns traveling across the Twitter platform were around this weaponization of Black diversity. So, Blackness is not a monolith. I was born in Zambia, which is in Central Africa. I grew up in the United Kingdom, and for the last 15 years have been living in New York City. So, I'm an immigrant. I'm somebody who knows what it is to be on the outside of a country. And I'm also a naturalized American citizen. And it was people with multiple identities like mine around a nationhood and personhood that were most impacted. So what's our jam? How do we make money? Yes, we're a nonprofit, but all nonprofits should be businesses. So if you think that Getty Images is an agency that provides pictures to news organizations around the world about key events, then AI for the People is a news agency that provides data analysis. So we will go in, we will look at what's happening at on social media, both in that moment and historically. And we can then go and tell you literally what's going on in the social media streets. My work is informed by a report that I co-authored while I was a fellow at Data and Society called Advancing Racial Literacy in Tech, which was published March 2019. And this report has three elements. So we're talking about racial literacy in a tech-enabled media, but this could be across any vertical, and it has three elements. It has a cognitive element, so what we know, what we think. And cognitively, we are in an environment where news is being driven by social media recommendation algorithms. So we know that 55% of adults are getting their news on social media, and that's being driven by an algorithm that is maximized for profit. It is not maximized for wellness, it's not maximized for health, and it's certainly not maximized to tell the truth about Black people. The other element is this emotional piece, right? We're speaking a lot about mental health today in the work that we're celebrating. And one of the things that the Mueller report found was that Black Americans were the most targeted group with disinformation in 2016. But specifically, they were keying in on these highly emotional moments around police brutality and the response. So we were in a highly emotive state around mourning and loss, and that was where the attack came in. And the third part of this is the action plan. What do we do about this? Well, what AI for the People decided that they were going to do was that they were going to create an intervention to counteract race-based disinformation and replace the sorrow and the hurt that was being put forward to divide us, and replace it with Black hope, Black joy, and Black possibility. So in terms of the case study, the group that we were looking at are an mostly online group known as the American Descendants of Slaves. They were really, and are still on social media now, using extremely divisive language around immigrants, Black immigrants, so people like me, very much saying that we shouldn't have civil rights and actually we shouldn't even be in this country, which very much sound like right-leaning talking points. Our data set was 1.3 million tweets, and we went back to the Twitter hosepipe from November 2019 and went through Election Day on November 2020. This is one of the things that was great while we were doing this work, where the American Descendants of Slaves actually got a spot on CNN, and we felt that it's better for you to hear what they were doing for themselves rather than for us to try and tell you. So if you listen, the conversation is with Kamal Bell, a Black man who is wearing a Black t-shirt, and a woman called Yvette Carnell, a Black woman who is light-skinned with dark hair, and she's wearing a light t-shirt. Please listen carefully because I recorded from my television, but it is really interesting.
Plan or outlook for reparation? How does it look? What is the strategy?
Well, first we have to rewrite HR 40. We have to look at money. We have to have a dollar amount attached to that.
Starting in 1989, Congressman John Conyers Jr. would repeatedly introduce HR 40, legislation seeking to establish a commission to study reparations. After he left Congress, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee took over the task of saying, "Can we talk about reparations?" So far, the answer from America has been, no. Yvette's not buying it.
You can come up with a bill for everything else. Nobody has any problem talking about how many trillions is going to be for Medicare for all. So you have to come to me with the same kind of plans you come to every other group with. You have to come to me with a budget. And I think this election year is a good way for us to hold candidates accountable.
Because a lot of the critique of ADOS has been, ADOS is telling Black people not to vote, and if Black people don't vote, then we end up with 4 more years of Trump.
If everybody has to live with it another 4 years because we don't come out in droves and support a candidate who isn't going to do anything specifically for us, that's not our fault. Now, Trump is not my reparations. We haven't encouraged anybody to stay at home, but we have encouraged Democratic down ballot.
Which means just vote the down ballot.
Yeah, you vote down ballot, but you vote for Democrats, but the top of the ticket gets no love unless you come to us.
Correct.
And say we have a reparations plan, which includes financial outlays of money. We have a budget attached to this. That's what we're pushing for.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's the way Kamal Bell ended that. So when we watched that, we were really curious because in 2020, most Black people would have argued that they did actually care who won at the top of the ticket. And it wasn't just reparations, which are an important part of healing the harm that Black people have encountered in America. But that wasn't the only issue. So we got to work.
Plan or outlook for plan or outlook.
Not like that. Oh, sorry.
Plan or outlook
Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm going to go to the next slide. So we viewed this to be an act, a potential act of online voter suppression. So that's an example of how social media can be used. This social media can be used to try and mislead us. But before I go forward, I wanted to just offer the definition of disinformation that we used in this project. So it's a huge lie. Disinformation is a huge lie. And in this case, it was that Black people's primary concern in 2020 was reparations. But they wrap it in a widely accepted truth. So we watched a minute of a video that was a segment that was 7 minutes long. And in it, one of the things Yvette Carnell correctly did was really point to the fact that Black people had been victims of systemic racism. So again, disinformation is a huge lie that's wrapped in an accepted truth, but it sounds plausible because of the truth. And what she actually meant, even though it was described, can be seen in this post on Twitter. So this was posted 2 days after that interview appeared on CNN, and it's a long tweet with a picture, but what it says is, and I'm quoting, "Vote down ballot this 2020 presidential election. That means when you get your ballot, leave the line for President blank or write ADOS, which is how they're known, no Biden, no Trump." And then that tweet was retweeted and retweeted and shared and really would, if followed, have put us in a very, very different place than we are now. And we were worried about this. We want to inoculate. So this idea of voting down ballot had actually been tried in 2016 when 70,000 people in Detroit didn't vote at the top of the ticket. And that swung Michigan to the right from Obama in 2012 to Trump in 2016. And the heightened atmosphere within Michigan because of COVID and mask wearing meant that there was an empowered militia. And in April 2020, an attempt to kidnap Governor Whitmore in that state. So this idea of having a whole swath of the population not taking part can have really real consequences. Another thing that we did, we provide data analysis, is that we looked into the data sets to see who was tweeting, who was being mentioned, who was being followed. And this is a list of the top 10 mentions during the Democratic Convention last year. Number 7 is an account, which is Wisha Bumpa Kuda. And it was mentioned 253 times in 1 week. And when we went into the data set and looked at the tweet, you'll find that the name of that tweet was reporting live from the Kremlin. When we went further into the data set, we found that this particular account had been fallow for nearly 5 years and then started tweeting in 2018. And we also found on one day that this account tweeted 144,000 times. So we believe that this could be an inauthentic account. And when we look to the followers, Yvette Carnell, the woman who just told people to vote down ballot, is one of the first people following this account. So we posited that this appeared to be a Russian bot. We still don't know, but all of the indicators were that this was inauthentic. In response to this, we created video. We believe in art. So we're going to show you a video from a voter in Philadelphia. which was the city that we were in, and this person is countering. So this was our counter message to the vote down ballot message.
Your grandmother grew up in the civil rights era where we were struggling to have the right to vote. And just to feel that these young people out here, these young Black people out here not doing it, I just feel so sad because your ancestors really struggled and fought and marched for everybody to vote, and it's so crucial. It has to do with healthcare, jobs, about this COVID, finding a vaccine that's going to stop this. So to me, it's important that people go out and vote for your life.
And we created 5 videos like this where we pointed out massive gains made by Black people through civic action, connected them to COVID, because we found in the ADOS data set, COVID was actually being avoided, despite the fact that Black communities were being so disproportionately impacted. And that's how that's how we filled the data void. So we did a number of things in this video. We use local media, we use local Philly voices as the truth, as the purposes of truth. We use strategic silence. So we didn't actually mention the not voting down ballot. We didn't mention the campaign, because there is research to show that when you mention disinformation, you spread it, but we didn't want to do that. We use micro-influencers. The person voting is a 46-year-old COVID survivor who's living in Philadelphia and then speaking to friends and neighbors and saying, don't vote. These people had 10 to 50,000 Twitter followers who were deeply engaged with what they were saying, and they were the ones pushing truth into a space where there had been lies. We inserted COVID into the narrative because the narrative hadn't been there, and we linked it very much with Black power and Black and Black voting, and suggested that through our civic action, we could overcome this health crisis. We showed how powerful a vote can be. Imagine voting for your life. Imagine being part of a legacy of the civil rights movement through this one civic act. And we developed a hashtag so that we could follow it. And our hashtag, Roberto, I'm on a Zoom. And our hashtag was Vote Down COVID. So how did it perform, right? We're a nonprofit, we're interested in impact. We measured, sorry, Roberto, I'm on the phone. We measured Vote Down Ballot, which was the disinformation hashtag, and the week before the election, that got 2.3 million impressions. Vote Down COVID, which was a series of 5 videos where we were saying things like, your grandparents fought for this, vote for your life, we are powerful, we can go beyond this as Black people, got 8.4 million impressions. So we outperformed 4-1, and this was across Twitter. So this wasn't geographical, this was across Twitter. And then we were featured on Our Body Politic, which is a podcast hosted by Farai Chideya, who's over at Ford. We wrote this up in an academic article in the Harvard Disinformation Review, where we explained that we looked at a data set of 1.3 million tweets. We saw that Black people were being pushed to the right through the rhetoric, and fear was being used as a way to engage civic action in the messaging. We found that micro-influences, ordinary Black people like you and I, can be used to inoculate this, that we can be the voice of truth, that we can game social media algorithms for good using our voices in a way that is positive and additive. And then our co-authors were trolls. So the same network that we had been studying then sent their followers to come and troll us. My colleague had to block 600 accounts. We ended up in a conversation with Twitter around the experience of the platform for Black women and femmes and trans folks. And that is an ongoing conversation that we're now having around the way social media can be used to promote Black truth and Black hope instead of Black disinformation. And then going back to the framework, going back to this idea that we can have a racially literate, tech-enabled media. Cognitively, we know that race leads to high social media engagement. We know that discussions about race and racism are going to bring, as Khalees would say, the boys to the yard. So how can we make sure that those discussions are empowering and additive? Emotionally, we found through our analysis that Black folks in Philadelphia felt really empowered by those videos, that they felt that despite being in a health crisis, there was something that they could do through this civic action to be part of a solution. And what's our action plan? Well, our action plan was to game social media algorithms for good, to create platforms where hope and joy and love can be spread through the vector of hope, Black hope, through the vectors of Black joy. And we were in good company. So what we were looking at was a racially literate, tech-enabled media system alongside other organizations like Vote That Yarn, which was a youth-led effort to get folks to vote in Philadelphia. Joy to the Polls, we saw videos of people doing the electric slide as they waited in those long, long lines because polling stations were closed. But we were going to use joy as a motivating factor. And Black Voters Matter. The blackest bus in America was in Pennsylvania, and it was getting people to the polls while we were using video and making sure that the algorithmic recommendation systems for Black folks in Philadelphia were ones of hope and joy. So that's just one case study. That's the type of work that we do. We believe that art is we believe that art moves policy, that joy moves policy, and we believe that social media spaces can be spaces for healing. They can be spaces for love if we are the people that are creating the content. So with that, I will close. I'm on 25 minutes exactly, and I would be open to any conversation.
Thank you, Mutale. Wow, like so many things. One, this case study took place over just this past year, right? And I'm just kind of sitting here wrestling with how busy this past year has been for so many of us. And I just, want to go back to how you started building trust through storytelling. Actually brings us back to some of the things Shin and Dorothy said earlier in the day related to the importance of language and the role of translation. Stories help translate and provide anchors. And I really value the kind of like data analytic, policy research, and digital strategy lens you provide, because it sets us up almost perfectly for our next conversation between Legacy Russell and Rashad Newsom.